Okay, hello. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to All Together Now. This is the Tramshed's free regular arts program running every Tuesday and Sunday at 4 p.m. And of course, right now it's Sunday, it's 4 p.m. We're live and direct on YouTube. And my name is Paul Cree, and today's session is going to be an introduction to spoken word. I'm going to show you a simple step-by-step process of putting your own story together and how to make that into a nice piece of spoken word. But before we get into any of that, just a little bit of housekeeping, just so this session runs as smoothly as it possibly can. So whilst you're using YouTube, please engage with us. It's an interactive session. Use the live chat as opposed to the top chat. If you use the live chat, that way we can communicate with each other as we go along through each of the steps, and and build up a little bit of a community for the next hour. Also, it's going to be a little bit of writing involved, so I'm going to take you through some steps. So it'd be good if you could have something you can write with, whether it's pen and paper, or perhaps a laptop or even a phone. Or if writing's really not your thing, that's totally fine. You can speak your way through all of these tasks. So perhaps it might be good if you've got a recorder device, that perhaps one of those recorder apps on your phone, or maybe someone that can maybe write a little bit for you. All right, so writing's not massively essential. This is spoken word. This is about speaking. So a little bit about spoken word and a little bit about me. So I'm a poet, a rapper, and a storyteller. I also work in theatre too. I'm part of a theatre company called Beats and Elements. We're a hip hop theatre company. We use rapping and beatboxing and spoken word, and we use that to tell our own stories. And with poetry and storytelling, I'm all about being able to tell my own story in my own way and working with people who can tell their stories in their own way. All right, this is what I'm interested in storytelling. Just a little bit about spoken word. It comes in a lot of different forms. There's very much a poetic form that's quite popular now. There's also the storytelling form, which we're going to look at today. And there are other variations, like people that give talks and speeches, that kind of thing. But we're going to be focusing very much on the storytelling side of things, because I think telling stories and being able to tell your own story in your own way is really important. It allows you to connect with the outside world, build up an understanding with other people, express yourself, and of course, you get to create something, your very own piece of art. And once you've done it, it exists, and you put it out there into the world. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. And this is what I like doing. All right. So I've been doing this for a number of years. As I previously mentioned, I've got a little book of poems and stories. I've written a few theatre shows. If you're interested in anything that I do, I've got a website, paulcree.co.uk. There's a bunch of videos and things like that on there that you can have a look at in your own time. But really, it's not about me. This is about you guys and hoping creating your own story. And we're going to use a very simple process, and you're just going to select an object. All right, now, so it's basically, this session is all premised on things that are around you. This is what I'm interested in when I'm putting my own stories together. I like the everyday things that exist around me. All right, so I'm going to give you a little demonstration of a story, this same process to come up with. And I'm going to take you through that story as we go along through each of the steps, as it's just an example of what you can do. And then we'll have a little warm up and we'll get into it. All right, but I'm going to introduce you to a little friend of mine. Hello, this is Stripey Bear, this geezer here. And you're going to hear a bit more about Stripey just now. So this is a little story I put together using the process that you're about to go through. Okay, here we go. It's Christmas Day, and I'm quite small. Don't know exactly what age. I'm unwrapping a present from my nana. She died when I was 8, so I know I wasn't any older. Anyway, Nana is sat in the armchair, kind, wise, and a bit slow with her movements, but she's older. She's probably supposed to be a bit slow. I'm sat on the floor, surrounded by my siblings, overexcited, like a chauffeur at feeding time, desperately trying to rip the paper off the present Nan's given me, wondering what on earth this package could be. It feels soft. Don't yet know what it is, but like the dolphin jumping out the water, splashing my family with the paper. Outbursts of soft, cuddly toy with brown fur, floppy ears, a little matching brown jacket, and a red and black striped jumper like Dennis the Menace. I'm thinking, this is banging. What is it? My nana says. It's a bear? A stripy bear. Stripy bear. My new best mate. And I hold him to my face. One of my brothers says he's probably a dog, but I don't care. I've named him Stripy Bear right there. He's Stripy Bear to me, always will be. And this is his story. Stripy has been my companion for a good while now. We do many things together. He goes in goal when I'm reenacting my favourite football matches. Stripy Bear, like Peter Schmeichel, stood firm between the two armchairs, the curtains being the net and my little sister's toy duck being the ball, as my rendition of that John Barnes net screamer for Liverpool catches my mum unawares and she slips and almost falls. Mum tells me off, I get in trouble, and me and Stripey get sent upstairs, where we wrestle. I'm Ultimate Warrior, he's Hulk Hogan, me putting Stripey in the gorilla press and slamming him down onto the makeshift wrestling ring, made of 2 duvet covers belonging to me and my brother Will. He doesn't know though. And Mum shouts up the stairs for me to stop it, making too much noise and screaming and thumping. Sometimes my little sister Lane joins in, even though she's proper annoying. This one time we were arguing. Stripey happened to be in my hands. She tried to grab him off me, so I pulled back. She grabbed, I pulled back. She grabbed, I pulled back. She grabbed, I pulled back. Whip! Fall back. Stripey Bear still in my hands, but his right ear was half hanging off. I cried my eyes off. Oh dear, Mum would say. She saved the day using her super sewing skills to stick back on his ear, but it wasn't the same. After that day, I could always see the thread behind his ear and I felt like I was to blame, as well as my sister Lane. Me and Stripey had many more days, sometimes just looking out the window when it rained, or keeping me company when I was sent to my room because I'd misbehaved. At some point, Stripey found himself in a corner of my room. Maybe that's where he was placed. Maybe he was thrown in a fit of rage. From there, he watched me grow, and he stayed for days, weeks, months, years, and watched as the football posters and wrestling figures were gradually replaced by rave flyers, CDs, and music equipment. One day, Stripey Bear got put in a box. That box got put in a loft, and over time, I forgot about the box. Occasionally, Nana would come up in family conversations, and a distant whisper of a memory would briefly appear in my brain. I'd think of Stripey, his floppy ears, then just as quick disappear again. I moved on, I moved out, I moved house, again and again and again, over 15 times in as many years, until one day I got the call from Mum and Dad to say that they were moving out. They'd sold the family house and I needed to get a laugh from the loft from a little cardboard box that I'd forgot all about. I took my then girlfriend with me and she helped me sort through all my stuff. She found the box, pulled out Stripey, and I felt like I was a child again, seeing my old friend. She asked me what I was smiling about. I paused for a moment, thought of all the above, and I was briefly reunited with a friend who I thought was lost. But the moment didn't last. I'd moved on, and I weren't that fussed. Thought we could take him to a charity shop. No loss, just another piece of nostalgia to get sad about. Of course, I reminded her that I'm a geezer now. I don't need no toys around. She looked a bit miffed. And again, it was forgot all about until I moved into her house a few years later. We became husband and wife. And one day, to my surprise, Stripey appeared, lying on our bed, little stitch still behind his left ear, same stripy jumper just lying there. Turns out my wife could be as crafty as Dennis the Menace. And yet again, I was renewed with a friendship. He now lives next to me on the armchair. He's got a new friend as well. Well, that's what my wife said. Her teddy called Aragon. Stripey probably tolerates him. As like me, he's a geezer and doesn't need the company, but he's all right with it. Now every day when I wake, I get to see an old mate. Sometimes I still feel guilty that I forgot about him. Tried to move on. But Stripey stays the same. We've been through a lot. me and my best mate, Stripey Bear, even though he's probably a dog. All right, there you go. So that is the story of this little geezer here, Stripey Bear. It's a true story. So what we're about to do is go through a process which relies on an object that's around your house. And when I did this and I ran through this process, I found Stripey. All right, but before we get into all of that, we're going to have a nice little warm up so we can get our eyes, our brains, and our creative minds bubbling. All right, so I want to create a little list of everyday things. So we can use the chat here. So you've got your live chat. I want to know about some everyday things that happen around your home. Some very simple everyday things. Now, I've got a little example slide that I've put together of some everyday things that happen around your home, just to give you an idea. All right. So put some of these in the chat. So I'll read what I've got here. So I put kettle boiling several times a day. Next door's kids jumping around. Someone's electric toothbrush running out of charge mid-brush. Sounds of the microwave pinging and the oven fan humming. TV on too loud. So these are just 5 things that I picked at random, just related to where I live. These are kind of everyday sounds that are happening around my house. It doesn't have to be a sound. It can be like a smell. It can be a touch. It can be something that you see. All right. So using the senses. So can we get in the chat going? Let's see if we can get a list of 5. If we get more than that, what I'll do is I'll pick 5 and then I'll show you how you can rearrange just to make a bit more sense. So we've got one already from Emily. Is that sipping on 2 hot coffee? Right, okay, cool. Let's put that, sipping on 2 hot, that's a good one. I'm not a coffee drinker, I'm a tea drinker. Sipping on 2 hot coffee, yeah? So everyday things that are happening around your home. Sipping on 2 hot coffee. What else we got? Dishwasher beeping. All right, that's a good one. Dishwasher beeping. They're lucky enough to have a dishwasher. Dishwasher beeping. Postman knocking on the door. We get so many deliveries in my house. Okay, these are all good. Postman knocking on the door. What else we got? Hearing the old stairs creaking and doors banging. All right, these are good. Hearing the old stairs creaking and doors banging. All right, some nice little bits of description too. What else have we got here? Dogs barking outside. Okay, yeah, very good. We've got a little puppy in our house who loves to bark any opportunity he gets. Dogs barking outside. He has a little barking contest of a dog at the bottom of the garden. You can probably hear him all the way through Plumstead. Dogs barking outside. Okay, we got anything else? Any other suggestions? Cold. Let's hit my feet. All right. All right, so these are some good suggestions here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick 5 of them. All right, so we've got sipping on 2 hot coffee, dishwasher beeping, postman at the door, hearing the old, the old tile creaking, doors banging, dogs barking outside. Okay, so I'm going to put 5 of these together. So I'm going to put sipping on 2 hot coffee. I think that's a great one. Beeping, postman knocking the door, dogs barking outside, cold tiles hit my feet. Cold tiles hit my feet. Okay, so should be sipping on 2 hot coffee, dishwasher beeping, postman knocking the door, dogs barking outside, cold tiles hit my feet. All right, so that's our 5 seemingly unrelated things. Okay, so just going to show you another slide here. All right, so the initial example slide I showed you. So what I did, I looked at my list and I basically I'm looking to see, can I rearrange them into something that makes a bit sense, something that sounds interesting? Is there a little narrative that I can find? Are there little rhymes and little bits of rhythm? So I looked at my list and I always think what's the first to start with? So I went with TV on too loud, electric toothbrush running out, sound of the microwave pinging, the kettle whistling, next door's kids jumping around. So I found it in there that I liked the sound of phonetically. There was a few rhymes in there. So loud, out, and then pinging, whistling. I had to change a few words in the sentences in order for me to get it to rhyme like that. But that's just an example. So let's look at our list. We've got sipping on 2 hot coffee, dishwasher beeping, postman knocking the door, hearing dogs barking outside, cold tiles hitting my feet. All right, I think a good place to start is cold tiles hit my feet. I like that because you've got something, not quite sure what's going on, but there's a sense in there. There's a sort of touching something. Cold tiles hit my feet. And then I think we're going to have second line. Instead of dishwasher beeping, I'm going to have dishwasher beeps. Cold tiles hit me, dishwasher beeps. So cold tiles hit my feet, dishwasher beeps. So I've taken the ing off beeping. So I've got feet beeps. Phonetically, that sounds like a nice kind of half rhyme. Postman knocking the door, dogs barking outside. So maybe let's have postman knocking. So I'm going to take the door off. So I just want postman knocking. So what have we got? Cold tiles hit my feet, dishwasher beeps, postman knocks. Okay, so we're stripping out quite a few of the words here. Sometimes I go for really long sentences. Sometimes I like nice, short and sweet. Cold tires hit my feet, dishwasher beeps, postman knocks. What can we got? So we've got dogs barking outside, and then sipping on coffee that's too hot. Dog barks, dogs barking. Let's have, okay, so cold tires hit my feet, dishwasher beeps, postman knocks. Dog barking again, so I'm going to strip out a few words from that sentence. Dogs barking, and then instead of saying coffee, sipping on coffee too hot, I'm just going to have coffee piping, as in piping hot. So each kind of shorter and shorter as we go along. Coffee piping, cold towels hit my feet, dishwasher beeps, postman knocks, dogs barking, coffee piping. So there's kind of a nice little rhythm in there, and it's almost like you've got a sense this is what the morning is in your house. Okay, so cold towels hit my feet, dishwasher beeps, postman knocks, dogs barking, coffee piping. So this is just an example, of course. It's only a little warm-up exercise to show you using everyday things that happen around you and the fun that you can have just by a little bit of rearranging and a little bit of sentence changing. How can suddenly a little story can appear. For me, this feels like this is a perspective of someone's everyday morning and the unique sights, sounds and smells that are going on around them. All right, so we're going to revisit this activity a little bit later on as we go through the process of you creating your own story. Okay, so we're going to go into our main task now. So spoken word, we're creating a story using an object that's around your home, and you're going to have a go at speaking that out, right? So the first part of this exercise, and comment in the comment box, let us know what's going on as we work our way through. You're going to pick an object around your room or where you are, wherever you are at the moment. Now, that object can be anything. Could be a picture, could be a mirror, could be a painting, a bit of jewelry, a bit of cutlery, a plate, something that has to have a little bit of meaning. So when I looked around my room, of course, I found Stripey Bear. Of course, Stripey Bear, as if you were listening in the story, was given to me when I was a kid by my nana. So it has a lot of meaning to me. Okay, so let us know to pick an object, all right? And then let us know in the comments what they are. Let's just see what kind of things you're coming up with, because it's always interesting what people select and say. All right, so you're looking for an object around your room that has a little bit of meaning. Okay, so let's see what we've got in the comments here. So what objects have we got? Maybe it's like a family heirloom, or maybe it's an old toy. It has to be an object that has a little bit of meaning to you, Stripey Bear. Okay, right, so once you've got your object, don't worry too much about there having to be a backstory or anything like that. That will come as we go along. So what I want you to do now, if you've got your object, have it in your hand, if that's possible. Have a look at it, have a feel of it, and I want you to have a go at describing your object as you see it. Describe your object. So for me, for Stripey, things that jump out were his ears. Stripey Bear is a dog, but for me, for some reason, I just assumed he was a bear. But it was his red and white stripy jumper like Dennis the Menace, his little black eyes, his white furry face, his white feet, his nice brown and his little jacket. So you're going to have a go at speaking out loud or write down. It's entirely up to you. Give a little bit of description for your object. Okay, a little bit of description. Okay, so someone's got a teapot. Okay, cool. All right, so you got a teapot. That's nice. And a photo frame picture of my granddad. Okay, cool. So perhaps give that a little bit of description with the teapot. If the teapot got Is it one of those teapots with like a mug with a little phrase on it, a little catchphrase? Or is it bone china? Is it, I don't know, porcelain, plastic? I don't know. Photo frame, picture of granddad. Yeah, cool. So how can you describe that? Is it a big picture? Is it an old photo frame? Is it taking pride of place on the mantelpiece? Yeah, these are all good. What we got? The old pint glass I like using at my parents' house. Okay, cool. A nice little story behind that already. Blue and gold leaf print teapot with a chip in the top. Okay, good. These are nice little details, right? All these details are really, really good. If you start to draw out these details, this is where the stories begin to emerge. I want to know how you got that chip in the top. Blue and gold leaf print teapot. Okay, right. So you've got your object and you've had a little bit of go at describing it. So write it down, but also speak it as we go along. So this is spoken word. It's really important that you early on start to begin to phrase things out in your mouth and get your words around the sounds. Okay, so what we're going to do next is you're going to tell me what's the origin of this object. Where does this object come from? So I've got a few questions here that I can ask out. All right, so how did you come to be in possession of this object? So for me, Stripey Bear, as I mentioned in the story, was given to me by my nana. Right, that's the origin as far as I know. All right, so how did you come to be in possession of this object? All right, how did you become to be in possession? So if you've got an idea how you got it, maybe someone gave it to you as a gift, maybe it was a family heirloom, maybe you found it in a skip. So write down or speak out loud whatever it is of how you came to have this object in your possession. Maybe it was magically appeared, like that thing on Harry Potter where I can't remember the word they use, people just appear out of nowhere. Who knows? Maybe it fell out of a tree. Something, you know, even if that's the case, you've got a story there. How did you come to be in possession of this object? So feel free to comment, let us know. I've got a bit of description. For Granddad has thrown his head back, laughing. I can almost hear him. Again, that's a really nice piece of description. It's almost as if you're starting to tell me like a backstory, almost. Granddad has thrown his head back, laughing. I can almost hear him. All right, cool. So what we want to know is a little bit of origin about how you came to have this object. Do you know where this object comes from? So if it was given to you, is there like a whole backstory to it, to this object? Is it from another country? I don't know where Stripey Bear comes from. My nana was from Kent, so maybe she bought it in a shop in Kent. I don't know. Sometimes you don't always need to know. I know that my nana gave it to me. That's enough for the origin. But perhaps your object, I don't know. Maybe there is a really interesting story behind where it's originated from. You know, there's a piece of jewelry from a whole nother country, something like that. I don't know. So if you know where it originates from, perhaps write that down, speak that out loud. So what we're doing here is putting building blocks. These are all building blocks to go that you're going to use to put a story together. Okay, so you've got a little bit about where the object has come from. Now, is there a backstory to this object that you know of? Is there a backstory? So perhaps it was, oh, here we go. So found it in a charity shop. It had been there for years, said the shopkeeper. Okay, very cool. So that's a nice little origin there. The pint glass is scruffy and faded like the rest of the pristine crockery at my parents' house. Okay, this is all really good. Shopkeeper said the lady owned it before, had a huge collection. Okay, nice. These are all nice little bits of details here. Okay, so these perhaps could always work as a backstory. Now, at these points, if you don't know what the backstory is, like this little geezer here, maybe if you're interested, if you feel the inclination, perhaps you can create one. Maybe it came from outer space. Maybe it came from another dimension. Who knows? I'm pretty sure this guy probably came from a factory somewhere in I don't know, Europe or Asia. I have no idea. All right, so but these all sound quite interesting. The shopkeeper said the lady who owned before had a huge collection. I like that. So again, sounds to me like a story is beginning to emerge here. All right, so we're going to move on, and I know we're moving quite quickly here. All right, but it's just to show you the process and to give you an idea. So stay with me. but of course you can keep going back as you feel. So here's like an emotional question, which is always a little bit more difficult to answer and write down because it's emotion. Emotion is quite difficult to write about merely because it's not a physical thing. It's like an abstract thing. How would you feel if you lost this object, or if this object was just taken away? How would you feel if this object just disappeared out of your life? Maybe you'd feel like sad. Maybe you'd feel happy. You know, maybe you wanted rid of it for years. So if I lost this guy now, despite telling you in the story that I read out that I pretty much forgot about him for years. But if I lost him now, I'd be devastated. You know, he's been with me most of my life, and he was given to be my nana. He's like a connection to my nana, really. I don't have many photos of my nana. She died when I was quite young. But whenever I see him, I think about my nana and I think about my family. So that's really important to me. So I'd be pretty upset if he was to disappear out of my life. So maybe speak out loud or write down a little sentence as if how you would feel if this object was suddenly taken away from you. So we've got another little comment from before. I've no idea where the pint glass comes from. It doesn't match anything else in the cupboard. I like that, so it stands out on its own. Maybe I should ask my parents for their stories. Well, that's cool. Maybe that, that can lead to perhaps a whole series. All right, okay. So we've got your object. You've described your object. You've talked a little bit about any potential backstory, where it could be from. What we're going to think about now are characters that are associated with your object. Are there any characters associated with your object? So by that, what I mean is, so for me, when I think about Stripey, the first person that comes to mind is my nana, of course, because my nana gave him to me. And I talk about the nana in my story, but it's also not just nana, it's my family, really, my siblings. I mentioned a couple of them in the story. I'm from a big family. I'm one of 7 kids. So this immediately makes me think about my family, sitting them all around me on Christmas Day. My little sister, when she pulled his ear off, that you can still see the stitch in there somewhere, maybe not. But yeah, so my sister, my brothers, my mum and dad, and my nana, and also my uncle. These are all people that come to mind when I think about Stripey here. So perhaps it may not even be a human. Maybe it's a pet. If it's like an object that you've picked that perhaps is a toy that your pet dog plays with, maybe it's your dog that's is someone that you intrinsically associate. So write down or speak out loud, who are the characters associated with your object? And if you can, give them a little bit of description, like you did with your object, like I did with Stripey Bear. So that way, again, you're putting in the building blocks, because if you mention a character in a story, you've got to remember people are listening or they're reading. So we need to be able to build up a little bit of a picture in our minds of what these people or animals look like. So have your characters or character, give them a little bit of description. Okay, all right. So if we've got any characters, I feel like I owe it to the lady to keep it safe, so we don't use the teapot so it doesn't break. Okay, cool. I like that. Maybe you could write a little ode to the lady from the shop. So what else we've got? My granddad died a few years ago, and I think about him often. So the photo frame is pride of place and special, and is a daily reminder of me. Yeah, that's really nice. So perhaps you could tell that story about your granddad. Maybe the object itself is almost like a window into this story about yourself and your granddad. I think of the lady with her huge collection, taking care of all her teapots and using them when guests are over. Okay, these are all really cool. I like these ideas that are coming through here. Yeah, again, so maybe like you could use this to write a story, perhaps where you're imagining this lady with a huge collection of teapots and having a wild variety of guests over, etc. Okay, these are all very good. So you've got your object, you've got a bit of description, you've talked about a background, you've talked about characters associated with the subject. So now is a really important one when you're telling stories, is locations. Okay, what are the locations associated with your object? Now, this can be local, as in to where you are. Maybe it's a particular room. Maybe in my case, Stripey, he lives on the bed now. So I think of the bed and also the chair. But also I think of the family home I grew up in. I think of the living room, of sitting on the carpet. I think of the old 2 armchairs where I used to play football with them. I'm thinking about my bedroom, my old bedroom that I grew up in, where we had the duvets on the floor, where I used to practice wrestling with them. But for you, maybe this story, maybe the location could be like another country or another county or a whole nother town. All right, there's no right or wrong here. You can go big or you can go small. What are the locations associated with your object? So yeah, for me, it's very much like a local thing. It's pretty much the home I grew up in, Stripey Bear, the loft, and the home that I live in now. All right, but maybe for you, maybe it's somewhere else entirely. Maybe it's a whole town. So like, what kind of locations have we got? So we got another comment. Maybe she would have wanted me to use for guests rather than keeping it on the shelf in the kitchen. So I guess if we was referring to the lady with the teapot collection. Yeah, this is all. So we're nice thinking out loud here. So it sounds like you're developing a piece where you're going to be musing on this teapot and wondering what its origins were and what the previous owner had intended for it. Okay, these are all cool, but kitchen, obviously, for this one is very much a location where the teapot lives. With the photo frame picture of Granddad, maybe like, is it on a particular shelf? Is it in a particular room? Is it on a particular table? All right, these are the locations. And you want to give that location a bit of description if you can. So for me, when I think about the living room, in the story, I talk about or mention wrapping paper being all over the floor because it's Christmas Day. And it makes me think about me being sat on the floor because I'm one of the youngest out of all my siblings. And then my older siblings and my mum and dad and my nan all sat on the chairs and seeing their feet in slippers. For some reason, that's an image that jumps to mind. But we're talking about locations, okay? What are the locations? All right. So hopefully, I know we're moving through quite quickly here. But again, it's just to reiterate, there's no right or wrong. You can take your time with each task. And these are things that maybe you can go away outside of the session and work on. So we've got another one here regarding the pint glass. The pint glass must have had an adventure in a pub somewhere. A pub we currently aren't allowed to go in. I very much sympathize with that comment. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a story. You could write a story about the pint glass. And maybe it's lived in several different pubs. Maybe it's had a whole life of its own. You could personify the pint glass and tell a story about the pint glass. And then how it came into being your possession, going from pub to pub, going on, I don't know, big brewery lorries where they transport all the beer kegs. Okay, so this leads us to the next part. Now you've got your object, you've described your object, you've talked about the characters associated with your object, you've talked about a bit of a backstory, you've talked about locations. So now with your object, is there a story that you want to tell? So a story could be how you came to have this object, how this story came into being in your possession, how this object came into being in your possession. Maybe it's the story of why this object is important to you, or the story of where this object comes from. Or maybe it's a story about losing it. Maybe you lost it one time. So for me, with Stripey, the story is kind of about losing him really and being reunited with him, even though he was only in my mum and dad's loft. But it's not just Stripey, it's also about my family and me growing up, going from being a kid to being an adult. And I got all of that just from picking him up from the corner and all these things, all these tasks that we've gone through, right? And then thinking, right, I want to tell his story about where he comes from. All right, so maybe put in the comments, what kind of story could you tell? I think there's already a few suggestions already, particularly with the pint glass, the teapot. There sounds like there's definitely stories emerging already. So what we've got here, the frame is in the lounge next to the TV, but the photo is in Hong Kong, like a portal to another world. All right, cool. So maybe this is an origin story. It's always cool when you're writing about somewhere completely different. Obviously, I'm in England right now. I don't know where everyone is watching, but Hong Kong is a whole nother continent. And that's exciting, a whole nother place, a whole different culture. So maybe there's a story there, and then how you came to be in possession of that object, perhaps. All right, so once you've got an idea for perhaps where you want to develop a story, just briefly summarize what this story is. You're just going to speak it out loud or write it down. It only needs a couple of sentences. So this is a story of a stripy bear, a cuddly toy that I was given to my nana when I was a child, and how I lost him and then was reunited with him again as an adult. That's it. It's just that you're not going to tell the story. You're just a little bit of explanation as to what the story is. All right, and of course that may change. This isn't definite. As you start writing it, you may find that changes. All right, but this is cool. This is just setting in the building blocks still. All right, so have we got any stories perhaps that we could tell? Let's have a look. Yeah, the story of the life of the pint glass. That's great. I love that. That's like my adult life of a pint glass. I like the idea of passing the teapot along to another charity shop when I'm done, so they can have a new home. So what's nice about that comment is that you're looking to the future. So perhaps it could be like a legacy story about the teapot. So you could do like past, present, and future, where the teapot came from, what you're doing with the teapot, and then looking into the future where you think the teapot may go. So that could certainly be an option there. Okay. So if anything else, any other ideas, we can talk through them. So again, I know we're going through these steps rapidly, all right, but I'm hoping by now you've got a good idea for what your story could potentially be. So this is where we're going to start to put the stories together. And something I like doing, I'm quite visual. So before I've even started putting words together, if I've got an idea for a story, I like to put it into a timeline. All right, so there should be an example slide here, which will show you like a timeline of the Stripy Bear story. So I had it in my head. I had all the description, all the characters I knew I wanted to mention. So I thought, right, I need to map this story out now. So you can see on your screen all the different parts of the story that I knew I wanted to elaborate on. I just put into a timeline. So Christmas Day, playing football in the living room, wrestling in my bedroom, Stripey's ear being ripped, looking out the window, left in a corner, put in a box, moved home, came home, girlfriend found him, got married, Stripey appears again. So really, I'm just summarizing sections that I'm then going to elaborate on when we start to put the story together. So this is like making a spine for your story, a structure. And again, it's not rigid. You can chop and change, you can add, you can delete as you go along, but it's good to have a structure to start with. All right. Remember, it's never definite. At least when you're creating stuff, it's fluid, so things do change as you go along. But it's always good to have like a nice foundation. So we've got a little spine here for our story. All right. So if we've got any more story ideas of what we could do with your object stories. I'm quite taken with this idea of the teapot. These are all very cool stories, and the pint glass. Okay. All right. So if you've got your timeline, so you know loosely, roughly what the story points are, the next thing I'd like you to do, right, is you're going to have a go. You're just going to look at your timeline and you're going to talk through each part on the story. All right. So this is a speaking exercise. You're not writing it here. All you're going to do is talk through each part. So each part should be like a heading. And you should be able to look at the heading and go, Christmas Day. Okay, so in this part of the story, I'm sat in the living room. I've got all my siblings around me. I'm on the floor. There's loads of wrapping paper everywhere. And my nana's just giving me a present. And I'm unwrapping the present. And that's where I get Stripey there. Okay, so you're just going to talk through the parts. So it helps sometimes when you're doing this to have someone with you. Show them your timeline and then talk through it. Playing football in the living room. Okay, this is the bit where I talk about being friends with Stripey. I used to pretend that he was a goalkeeper and I was a striker, and I'd kick my little sister's toy duck in between. He was in goal and score goals. Wrestling in my bedroom, it's quite self-explanatory, but me and Stripey, I was really into WWF before it changed the name to WWE or whatever it is. I was Ultimate Warrior, he was Hulk Hogan. And then Mum would get angry when we were wrestling. Stripey's ear being ripped off. This was a tussle between myself and my sister Lane, who wanted to play with Stripey one day, and she was tugging at him and I was pulling back, and then his ear ripped. And then of course I start to get older, and I I like writing things. Sometimes I like being on my own. I like a good window to look out of, particularly when it's raining. And there was a point in my old bedroom where Stripey used to sit on the windowsill, and I just look out the window and have a good old think. That's what I like doing sometimes. A nice little pensive think. So that's what that is. Then, of course, as I get older and I'm not so much into playing with toys anymore, I talk about Stripey being left in my bedroom. So I kind of use this moment in the story to show time passing and to show me getting older. So talk about the football posters coming down and me getting into music and essentially coming into a young adult. And then, of course, as I get older, Stripey gets put in a box. And then as I become an adult, I leave home. And then years later, I come home with my girlfriend to move my stuff out. And then we get married and I'm reunited with Stripey again. Okay, so all you need to do here, you can do this on your own. It works well if you've got someone with you, is you're going to talk it out loud. And sometimes what I find doing this exercise, when you're talking things out loud, it can start to make sense in your head a lot more. Sometimes it just helps to put a structure in if you're a bit confused about what type of story you want to tell. So this can really help to get a bit of clarity in your thinking. But you're just going to talk it for now, all right? You're just going to talk it through. That's all you need to do. Okay, so we've got any more ideas on the stories we've got? I wonder what's happening with this teapot. The teapot timeline is going to be rather fascinating. Let's have a look. Yeah, story of the pint glass. Okay, I wonder that pint glass origin story is going to be quite interesting. All right, so you've had to go at talking it through. Do you know what the structure of this story is going to be? Very loosely, remember, subject to change. You're now going to have a go at putting a first draft together for this story. Now, as I mentioned at the start, spoken word is it's an oral art form. So it's about speaking it out loud. So some people aren't so much into writing. I like both. I love performing, but I also enjoy writing. Again, I think this can work orally. Now, if you're going to go down the non-writing route and you want to write the story verbally, just using your voice, it really, really helps to have some kind of recorder. So what I would suggest there is doing the timeline exercise where you're speaking it out. You're just going to keep doing that. And each time you go to retell it, you're going to refine. Try and remember anything that sounded good, any particular lines that you liked. Note them down if you can, and then just keep going back and retelling it. But of course, if you're writing it, you're going to have a go at putting your first draft together. Now, I think I might have skipped a couple of steps. Right, so we're going to have a go at writing our first draft here, but there's a couple of things that are really important before we begin to write, okay? Now, when you're telling a story, it's important that you're quite consistent with telling a story, and that really, because this is spoken word, you're relying on people listening to you as a performer, whether it's recorded or seeing you on a stage or just listening to you speak it out somewhere. All right, it's really important that you need to put people in the moment straight away. Now, you're going to have a go at choosing a perspective for how you're going to tell your story. Perspective is really important, and by that, what I mean is what language are you going to use to tell this story? Are you going to tell it as if it's happened in the past, or are you going to tell it as if it's happening now? All right, or maybe you can do a mixture. So where you got the story of the teapot, maybe you want to do a mixture of past tense, present tense, and maybe even future tense. However, most stories tend to be told in past tense as if it's happened. So I was in the kitchen, or sometimes it's a perspective that I enjoy doing it in present tense. So you're going to speak the story as if it's happening now. So I'm in the kitchen. I could smell bacon. The kettle is boiling, right? So even though it's not happening now, you're going to speak as if it's happening now. So you're going to make an important choice here. And what I would say is pick one and stick with it throughout when you're putting your draft together. So are you going to go for present tense, or are you going to go for past tense? The Stripey Bear story, I kind of use a mixture of both, but I've been doing this quite a long time, so I over the years, I've learned to adapt to perspectives. But I'd say for now, if it's your first time, just pick one. Are you going to speak it in the past tense, or are you going to speak it in the present tense? All right. And then you're going to keep consistent all the way through, unless, of course, you've got a really interesting story about a teapot. So what have we got here? The teapot sits on the shelf of the charity shop, remembering its last owner fondly. Now, that, to me, that brings us nicely to our next point. That sounds like a first line to me. Okay, so what I want you to do now you've got your perspective, is you're going to write that very first line. Now, this can be really, really difficult. Some people don't even do this all the way to the end. But what I find is, if you choose a first line, that gets it rolling in your mind. It gets those, it's like you're opening the valve on the creative gas. All right. And of course, if you don't like it, you can always go back and change it. So for a first line, you already know what your perspective is, whether you're talking in past tense or present tense. For a first line, I think it's really important to put the listener in the moment straight away. So try and give at least one piece of factual information, or maybe one or two. So for my Stripey Bear story, I think it's something I say, it's Christmas Day and I'm unwrapping a present from my nana. It's something like that. It's Christmas Day and I'm unwrapping a present, or it's Christmas Day and I'm quite small. I think that's what the first line is. So I'll give them two pieces of information there. That it's Christmas Day, I'm quite small. So I'm inferring that I'm a small child. And then I start going into talking about unwrapping the present. But that's the first line. It's Christmas Day, boom. So immediately for a listener, they're like, oh, okay. They start to build a picture very, very quickly. What you don't want to do is have loads of unnecessary background information, because people may switch off at the beginning. All right, so try and have a go at picking a first line, write them in the comments. Some people find it really easy writing first lines. I tend to find it quite difficult, but I do find once I've committed a line, and quite often I'll end up changing the first line, I find the story starts to flow a lot easier. So this comment we've got here is really good. The teapot sits on the shelf of the charity shop. To me, that sounds like a first line, because boom, right, I can see the image of a teapot and it's sitting on the shelf in a charity shop. So I'm immediately beginning to build up a picture in my mind. So what we've got here, splash, gurgle, slurp, beer comes rushing in, like that. It's a nice action. That's an action first liner. You've got onomatopoeia with those sounds, splash, gurgle, slurp, beer comes rushing in. So immediately, to me, I'm getting a sense of there's something cool going on here. Maybe there's a bit of action, all right? So, but you've got some facts in there and you've got a bit of action and you put us straight into the moment, all right? So have a go at putting your first line together. And once you've got your first line, once you've got your perspective, you can have a go at putting your first draft together if you've not already started, all right? So you've got all of those building blocks, your object, your characters, your locations, the descriptions, your first lines, and you know how you're going to tell the story. You've got your timeline. All right. So now is the time to have a go at putting a first draft together. Now, trick here is don't stress too much about it. Don't overthink it. Just let it come out. Remember, you got your timeline. All right. But put the draft together. Try and get all the way to the end. And then, of course, you're going to go back through it. You're going to speak it. You're going to go through it with your eyes and your hands. And things will start to make a lot more sense, where you can edit out what sounds right, what doesn't. So you're going to get your first draft together. And it's a good feeling when you get to the end of your first draft, because I think for me, the fun bit is editing when you go all the way back through. All right. So once you've got your first draft, all right, I want you to read it aloud. Okay. Read it out loud and try and do this at least as many times as you can. For me personally, even though I like physically writing my stories, so I type them up or I write them on a piece of paper, they don't really fully exist until I've said it out loud a lot of times. Because when I start speaking them out loud, I'm interested in spoken words. So this is a performative art form. It's about how do these words and sentences sound in my mouth. So as I'm sounding them out, sometimes I might have chosen a word that I've written that isn't quite right. So I'll be like, okay, what could be a different word that I could use here? And also, as I find in some of the writing, I find that sometimes there are like little lines that I didn't even realize perhaps have a little bit of rhythm to them, or I might stumble across a rhyme, or I might realize, okay, I might want this whole thing to rhyme. So I do a little bit of editing. So for instance, for an example, in the Stripey story, the way I wrote it, it kind of goes in and out of rhyme. That's a particular style that I enjoy using when I'm performing. But unintentionally, whilst I wrote this line, which was desperately trying to rip the paper off the present Nan's given me, which is at the beginning. When I've read it through a couple of times, I'm going, okay, that sounds quite rhythmical, that desperately trying to rip the paper off the present Nan's given me. Now, in this moment, what I want to convey is the excitement of a young child opening in a Christmas present. So desperately trying to rip the paper off the present Nan's given me. So the rhythm and the speed at which I say it can hopefully portray that excitement. So as you're going through, reading out your draft, try and think of the emotion behind the sentences or the parts of the story that you're trying to tell. Right, sound it out, really sound those words out. Are there perhaps too many words in a sentence, or are there not enough words? Does is the sound of it getting the emotion that you want to get across? So you can play with speed, you can play with volume. So at the first half of this story with Stripey, I'm talking about being a child. So I was very much thinking about being a child. So in the way I was speaking it, or trying to, was to convey a little, like a childlike mannerism of speaking. But I get to the point where I get older, I tried to deliberately slow down to kind of convey being an adult and the pace of life slowing down, right? So, and of course, there will be many cases where I went through line by line, and there were certain words that I thought didn't quite sound too right, so I changed them around. So you want to read it through at least 3 or 4 times. Read it to someone around you, a friend or a family member. And if you've got like a written document, on your computer, go back, make any changes that you want. You'll correct any sentences. And if you've got like what you think may be a finished draft, then what you want to do is record it if you can. Type it up in neat, maybe put it into a nice document, or get yourself a nice little audio recorder. You know, most smartphones have a voice recorder on it now, or even film yourself reading this story out loud, because you've just gone through this whole mad crazy process. You've looked around your room and you've just picked out an object, and from that you've created your very own story, and you want to let that story live. This is your way of communicating to the world, if you so wish, but also just enjoy the fact you've created a piece of art, and let that art live, even if it's only you that ever see it, or maybe sharing it with your family and friends, whether that's in a video, or whether that's in a little audio file, or in a document. So let's have a look. It really helps to read it out loud. Yeah, definitely. So me, like I say, the writing side of what I do spend quite a bit of time writing. But really, the real work gets done when I start speaking it out loud. That's when the real editing takes place. It's a little bit like a band who records songs in a recording studio, and then they go out on tour, and they might do 50 different gigs. And by the time they've done the 50th gig, they've probably got the songs sounding the way they want them to. So like the recording process is like in the studio, is like the writing process, but really it doesn't exist until it's gone out in front of an audience. And by the time you get to that 50th gig, you're like, okay, now I know how I want this story to sound. Let's have a look. I hear the laughter, even though I don't, sometimes somewhere in the back of my memory. I think that could be your first line. I think that's great. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much all of the steps. So if you followed, I'm really hoping that you've got the beginnings of a story that perhaps you can go away and work. Or you might have even worked so fast you were able to keep up and created your own story. Let us know. As in Tramshed are on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Share with us what you've created. Maybe it's a picture, maybe it's a little video of you reading it out. But yeah, that's it. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope this has been a valuable process. And if you really enjoyed it, maybe do it again. Go through the same process. See if you can create another story, and enjoy what the gift of what storytelling is. Share it with your friends and family, or just, I don't know, just revel in the moment that you've created something. So It's been great being able to do this today, taking time out on a Sunday afternoon. Big thanks to Tramshed. Big thanks to you who've tuned in. Right, this is all together now. So this happens every Tuesday and Sunday at the same time at 4 p.m. There is a couple of feedback forms, which would be great if you could fill those in, because projects like this, they rely on getting that kind of feedback from participants, and it helps with the funding for these things. This is a free project. It's been really great for me. I've actually watched a couple of the other ones, and they've been really, really beneficial. So yeah, I have a look at the feedback form, fill it out where you can. And there's also an activity sheet as well I've put together. So in case there's someone you think that might benefit from this session who wasn't able to tune in today, there's a PDF activity sheet. So contact Tramshed and they can send that activity out. On all of the activities I put in this video today will be on that sheet, so they can have a go to. No one gets left out. So next week, your next session for All Together Now is going to be on Tuesday, 4 p.m. It sounds like a cool one as well. You are the champ. You're going to create your own wrestling character, alter ego. So it's kind of a nice little development on from what we've just done here. Bit more character development. That sounds like it could be a lot of fun as well. A wrestling alter ego. Yeah, I like wrestling, right? And then, of course, this time next week, you got Float Your Own Boat, where you're going to learn about the Japanese art of origami. But that's it. That's it from me. I've been Paul Cree. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, PAULCREE. Have a look at my website. If you're interested in what I do, there's a bunch of videos on YouTube. Put Paul Cree spoken word and you'll find it. But I hope you've been able to create your own stories and you'll keep going. It's a lot of fun. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Thank you very much.